we're about 85 people now, including a handful of contractors. What the hard part, when it comes to the developer side, obviously we all know the languages were different, right? So obviously training from someone to go from one technology to another, if they have a CS degree and they're familiar with some of the baselines, C or Java, it hasn't been an issue. For others, it has been an issue. So we obviously have had to hire for that skill set. It really comes down to our UI, UX, IA people and the true designers, getting them to think mobile first now, which is really important. They're going to think about responsive web design, responsive layout. It's something that is taking time, but the beauty of it, honestly, is that there are a lot of people that have been designing for mobile and for alternative screens for a long time. So they're out there. So for us, we've actually been hiring some awesome people that are just doing a great job, and the people who really want to engage in it are making that transition. And we do workshops, we do trainings in-house, and people talk about it a lot. It's been really collaborative in this transition, and we've been making the transition for about 6 years now. So it's, but the iPad was, I will say, when the iPad came out, people were more excited on our team than the iPhone, because then all of a sudden these web designers are like, okay, more screen real estate, cool, I can do a lot more of this.
So Calvin, you used to own an interactive agency back in the heyday, I think, and now you're focused on apps. What do you sort of see the difference in kind of skills or methodologies or whatever?
So I think, I'd like to use an example to kind of explain our opinion on web design versus app design. When the original iPad came out, we had several apps available the day it came out. One of them was NPR for iPad. So it's a native app designed for iPad. Very, very interesting, physical, gesture-based experience for NPR. The same day that that came out, NPR was one of the launch partners for Apple for the iPad compatible website campaign they did. Basically taking all the flash off and kind of re-looking at your site, and them and CNN and New York Times and a bunch of other ones had these very usable, very optimized full websites for iPad as well. So every iPad, as you know, ships with Safari, and everyone, I think, understands how to go to the web and type in an address, and everyone knows that npr.org is there and that they could use it on their iPad. So I'm going to argue that there is a very low barrier for a user to use npr.org on their iPad. And I'm going to argue that there's a much higher barrier, although not very high because of the magic of the App Store, there's a much higher barrier for them to even know that NPR had an app out in the first day or weeks and the months after the iPad. And the time it takes to get it and download it and all that other fun stuff. There was and still is a 5 times different in user engagement and use of the NPR for iPad app versus the site. So the app is used 5 times as much as the site. That is shocking. That doesn't make any sense.
Wait, the app is used 5 times longer, or there's 5 times more users of the app than the web version?
5 times more engagement. So basically, there is 5 times as much traffic, 5 times as much use, 5 times as much users. I'm serious. This is a big deal. So we believe it's a survey of one, but frankly, the numbers are so important. I think it would be silly to not stop for a second and think about that. That means when given an opportunity, when given a choice, users with their free will want a mobile design experience. They are no longer interested in a web design experience when given the opportunity to choose. And that is, in our opinions, across every industry. There's a really interesting book out called Mobile First. I forget the talented author's name right now, but I completely agree with Brian that if you're in the business of web design and you have no interest in even moving to mobile, steal from mobile. You will build the most beautiful and most usable and most compelling future-focused websites if you steal directly what mobile is doing.
Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. I'm sort of curious. I mean, we obviously had this kind of discussion yesterday about the app market and how well it works and concerns. And so, Randy, why don't you tell me a little bit, like, what's your basic feeling about the app market now and how it works well for you and where there sort of needs to be some improvement?
Well, I think it works well for us because, like I said, it gives us a lot of opportunities to create products that we just frankly can't do in the bookstore right now. You know, what we find challenging is that there's just so much activity there. There's so many apps being produced. There are so many app developers. There's so many publishers. In book publishing, you know, there's the big six. There's six. There's small publishers, but we know who our competition is, and the industry's been chugging along for many, many years, and it's the known playing field. And the app market's kind of the Wild West, right? You have a lot of, you know, 2-3 person shops, as Brian said, who can go out there and create this killer product, and all of a sudden, you know, they're ruling the marketplace. So, you know, we're going at it from a different angle. It's a new way to create products, and we've had great success launching our products. We've, you know, gotten a lot of promotions. The key is after that first couple weeks, how do you keep it going? Okay. How does somebody know your app is there? Where's the discoverability is a challenge, because there's just so much product.
And you know, we've had discussions about, you know, sort of a few people controlling sort of the app market. So obviously you want to produce an app, you know, you have to put it, if it's an Apple app, it only goes to one place, Apple has to approve it. And in some ways what I do think is interesting is like when I said it in the beginning, when you look back at when the web came out, there was a lot of principles of the web about openness, and you know, there wasn't a single gatekeeper, and this neutrality. And I do think it's a whole really interesting thing as we look in the future, is that sort of a model that will continue. It broke once, you know, sort of will it break again?
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's a loaded question too, because like listen, like once again, Apple's given us the opportunity, and last night's conversation was really fun. We're not going to repeat it here, you know.
Sure, let's do it. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, but it was, you know, I think but I will say that they've given us the opportunity, and when I say they and us, means everyone. We can be an established company, big publisher, small developer, and it gives us the opportunity to have presence in a market to get our work out there. And I will say the app market...
With a gate.
With a gate. There is a gate, but I'll say I used to get so frustrated. I mean, if you were in mobile, raise your hands if you were in mobile 5, 6, 8 years ago, dealing with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, you know, and it was like...
He's giving
yeah,
me thumbs
exactly.
down.
I mean, they're nice people, but you know, people on the other side...
Well, let's do this. Who's in mobile now?
Who's in mobile
in any
now?
way whatsoever?
How about that?
I mean, look at the unlocking. That is like a 4,000% increase.
Because
just right there.
The gate was huge back in the day. It was like if you were not one of the top 5 publishers, much like book publishing, getting into a bookstore, right? You could not get on deck on a carrier deck. And they owned you, man. I mean, it was like, you would like, they're like, oh, if they love us, we're gonna make money. And if they don't love us, God, we're dead. That's it. And they tried off-deck models. We tried off-deck models for a long time. We were lucky. We were on Verizon exclusives for over a year, and we made money. But if we had not gone on there, we wouldn't have had a mobile business.
And the reality is that 95% or more of apps are approved by Apple literally within a matter of days.
Yep.
That's the reality. Yep. That's the facts. There are very few, literally a handful of apps that never get approved. And there are good reasons why most of, if not all, because I don't know every single story, those don't get approved. Apple has laid out an unbelievably generous ecosystem. It's not called an app store, it's an entire ecosystem. It has enabled a complete transformation and revolution in humans and their connections with content. And the very important thing to understand is that no one is holding a gun to a single user's head and being told to buy an iPhone, being told to buy an iPad. It is from a position of free will to spend all that money to buy a beautiful device and get all this great content. No one is holding a gun to my head, or Randy's head, or Steve's head, or Brian's head to build solutions for these things. Okay. Users vote with their dollars, they vote with their feet, and they vote with their hearts. So this is actually a wonderful thing, and it's much better than the old days when you didn't know whether or not you're going to get a deal with Nokia or not. Yeah. You didn't know whether or not you're going to meet the guy and go to dinner and be able to cut some deal. The rule sets are very generous, and they're very well laid out. And I think it's time that we stop complaining about it and take all that energy that we're using to complain about it and put it into building wonderful things for our users.
It is a bit disruptive, isn't it?
Yeah, can I just say one quick thing from a publisher perspective? What I find intriguing about the App Store is that for the first time, publishers have access to the consumer, which we never did before. We consider our customer to be the booksellers. And now we started thinking about what our users really want and really catering to them more in some ways. For instance, like we published a zombie product, and you know, big shock, a lot of people who are zombie fans are on Android. Like we never, you know, we threw something into the App Store, and then, you know, it's doing really well, don't get me wrong, but we suddenly had access to our consumers, and we found out maybe we should do some studies, and we realized Android fans are zombie fans, right? And it made us really change the way we think about what markets we publish into and what products we develop for which platforms.
Critical research there.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, but